There you go. Go ahead.
Are we good? Okay. Mr. Mayor, council members, thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. In reference to the Marigold Street concept, yes, we do have our consultant that is conducting additional data. This is data that we're collecting firsthand, as well as through ACHD. And we're also running several different modeling techniques as we go through and analyze that corridor. Does that help answer your question?
Couldn't quite hear Rebecca.
You're kind of fading in and out a little bit.
But what I thought I heard was the answer to Council Member Jorgensen's is the answer is yes.
Yes. Can you hear me a bit better now?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
that's better.
Okay. Okay. I got a little closer. Yes. So the answer is yes. With our consultant, we have Horrocks as our consultant. They are conducting additional studies and additional traffic analysis that's current, that's taken place within the schedule of this actual concept study we began late last year. And so we're getting additional numbers, collecting additional data, and that's all feeding into really what we're looking at and what we're recommending for the Marigold Street corridor.
Thank you. I do have a follow-up. Are you modeling, is ACHD, I won't hold you personally responsible, is ACHD modeling to include the projected traffic from the soccer activities and concerts that will now be occurring at this new stadium?
Mayor, council members, that is a great question. So we are using what Compass has currently in their modeling demographics. And I do believe that those types of considerations are included in the current modeling. They're mostly tied to like available job demographics and it's hard for me to articulate this because I'm not an engineer and in that type of realm, but I've been assured that that type of data is kind of being reflected in what we're looking at today. So I don't know if that fully satisfies your question, but I know that what you're getting at is very important. And now with ITD on board, really with those improvements at the Glenwood Marigold intersection, I think that all around we're going to be looking for the best alternative that will suit that area.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, Director Thornborough, I do have another question. So recently, I know I was certainly surprised after the council voted regarding a pedestrian crosswalk on Shindig, and the mayor and I have had an opportunity to chat about that, and I understand the history. I do have a question regarding what is the lead time to adjust these priorities? For instance, there are certain factors that could push, just as we identified and promoted the urgency of sidewalks on the east end, there are other developments happening that could impact and dictate the need to flex on this plan certainly within 5 years, particularly if we are successful in continuing to redevelop the east end of the city. There's going to be further demands and needs that will be uncovered, I predict, in a very short amount of time, faster than a 5-year turnaround.
Mayor, Councilmember Jorgensen, I may not be able to give you a great answer, but I can start with the city reviews this once a year. And so within a 1-year time frame, we do have the ability to go back and request amendments. There's a secondary point in this process further on down the year. This is about a year-long process, give or take. Hopefully, Ms. Phillips doesn't hate me for being slightly off on it, but then say this fall, I might have the dates in here, but So the anticipated release of the draft plan is in July. So there is some time after this, if the city goes, whoa, mistake, why did we make that recommendation? Or we need to get that out, where we could articulate that to ACHD. My hunch is that if it's been in the plan and ACHD has expended funds, that may be more difficult for them to act on that. And I can defer to Rebecca if I'm speaking correctly on their behalf. But.
Ms.
Yeah.
Phillips, would you like to offer clarification?
Yes, Mayor, council members, Jenna, thank you. That she has it correct. We will be releasing the initial draft. Looks like around July 15th is the release date. At that time, we reach back out and we give our partners and the public another round of comment. And so typically around that time, we will hear from our partners and the public on, hey, does this look right? Is this aligned with your priorities? Has something shifted? At that time, we are able to make final edits and all in accordance with our ACHD commissioners, right? They give us the final direction. And Jenna has that right. If it's a brand new project that's not on your list, likely that would have to go through additional measures, the scoping effort, and there's all kinds of different variables for projects. But if it's something on your list and it's just a matter of shifting maybe 1 and 2, or you're moving 4 up and that's now your 1, that certainly I don't think at that time around the initial draft is when you would want to make those shifts. Really, you would really want to do that the following year and make that final call.
Thank you.
Any further questions for the ACHD representative or Director?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Councilmember.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips, for being here and adding to our discussion here tonight. And I also really appreciate the work that your organization and your agency is doing regarding Marigold. I can speak for myself. I think one of the biggest thing there for many of our residents, as I understand it, is deterring the cut-throughs that use Marigold and Garrett instead of Chinden and Glenwood. So for what it's worth, my little commentary there is to pull out all the stops to deter cut-throughs. And I don't know what all those stops could be, but whatever tactics those may be, I would just put a little emphasis on that. Just, if people need to get from West Boise to North Boise or Northwest Boise, we want them to use Chinden and Glenwood. And then just a general question too on the same subject is, so I know those two streets, Marigold and Garrett, are identified as or defined as collectors. So I guess I was just curious, are there assigned speed limits that go with collectors? I mean, could a collector have a 30 mile? Obviously, I mean, it does, but I think that road functions as an arterial. That throughway functions as an arterial at times. So I'm just trying to understand what collectors typically, what their speed limits typically are. Are they residential areas? Are they always just 20 miles an hour? I don't even know. I'm assuming our city has a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit unless otherwise posted. But anyway, I'm just curious about that general question.
Yes, Mayor and council members, thank you. Those are great questions and great feedback for me and running the Marigold Street concept. I can assure you that looking at that cut through traffic is one of our top improvements. So we're really looking at those alternatives that's going to help eliminate that cut through traffic that's happening from the state highway system. And in terms of the speed limits, I think it varies from collector to collector. It really does have to do with the data that that is currently being exhibited on each and every roadway. But I also will rest assured we are looking at a reduction of speed limit on Marigold. We are considering that, and that will be something we're going to look at with the project team. In terms of helping to alleviate that cut through, along with other improvements that we're finding might work for that street.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yep, absolutely.
Any further questions from Ms. Phillips, Director Thornburg?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilwoman?
Yes. This question is for Rebecca again. So the plan that you were working on for Marigold, will that go back out for public review and comment again?
Mayor and council members, yes, that we are taking back out to the public for sure. That we have scheduled in May, I believe it's the middle of May. I want to say May 19th. We have our date already set for the council chambers, and we will be running a virtual survey concurrently with that in-person public involvement meeting. Prior to that, we are also going to be announcing it on our social media platforms and possibly doing door knocking. We're still in the early planning stages of the public involvement plan. But yes, we will be taking all of this out for public involvement, and we hope to see all of you there as well.
Thank you. And just to clarify, because we're still having a little bit of warbling going on, did you say May 19th that you're looking at having a meeting, and that would be here in our council chambers?
Yep,
Okay.
let me double check that date for you guys. I have my computer open. Yes, and I was correct. So it's going to be Tuesday, May 19th, and we have the council chambers reserved for the evening. So we're going to probably have that going so that a majority of the residents and the public can attend. So it's not on work hours. We'll have it in the evening.
Thank you.
Maybe we could send an invite to council on that. Okay, thank you. Any further questions for Director? Okay, all right. So I guess the motion is to approve the 5-year plan this year. Is that correct, Director?
Mayor, that is correct. It would be to adopt resolution 124026, which would approve this year's request for the 2026 through 2031 5-year work plan.
So, Mr. Mayor, I will make that motion that we move to approve, I move to approve Resolution 1240-26, which is a resolution of the Garden City Council adopting a project request list to be included in the 2027 through 2031 ACHD 5-year plan.
And I would second.
All right, I have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? Okay, clerk call roll, please.
Councilmember Jorgensen,
Yes.
Councilmember Rasmussen.
Yes.
Councilmember Carver Herbert.
Yes.
Okay, that is approved. Thank you, Ms. Phillips. Appreciate you being on Zoom with us today and explaining all that. So the rest of the items on G were removed, as previously mentioned, are coming off the agenda. We'll put those on a later date. And I don't believe we have any unfinished business, so we will move on to item I, news business, and Council Member Carver Herbert's legislative update. So the microphone is yours.
Okay, thank you. So it's been a busy legislative session, particularly I think for cities. The legislature has still been dabbling in a number of more social policy restrictions and censorship, which can have differing levels of impact on the cities. Certainly there are some law enforcement impact types of legislation, but the legislation that I've been following pretty closely has been that through the Association of Idaho Cities. So I do sit on the legislative update call that they have every Friday morning. They do send out an agenda the night before, the afternoon before, and they go through all of the new legislation that's introduced in the weeks period. And then they ask the board members for the vote on whether AIC will oppose or support or remain neutral on legislation. So they've been tracking, there are about almost 60 bills that they're tracking pretty closely. And I think those that are of particular interest to us, I think fallen in the areas of housing and land use policy. There are a number of bills that have been introduced and then they've been tabled, and then there have been new bills that have been introduced around the topic of really with the intent of really trying to encourage more affordable options for development. And the challenge with most of those bills is they preempt local government, and which is one of the #1 reasons that AIC has taken the position to strongly oppose the majority of those. There has been one bill in particular, Senate Bill 1753, that is moving through the process. And wait a minute. Yeah. No, I'm going to get these confused because literally we have a senator and we have a representative that are introducing fairly similar pieces of legislation in both bodies. And part of the concept is that sometimes if you can get certain legislation through one body, you may be more successful in doing it on one side than on the other, with the hope that maybe may be able to move forward with a particular bill. But that's the one that I'm really thinking about. Yes, so there is one bill that the AIC has at least been more favorable to, and that has to do with manufactured housing, with multifamily manufactured housing. And they worked with the sponsor on that in order to get a number of changes that at least made it seem more palatable to the cities. But for the most part, almost all of these housing bills are bills that they are taking a strong oppose to. And so again, they each have different components of them, but for the most part, just if for no other reason, local control, stepping in and taking into local control, that's the primary reason. But there are very, very specific reasons for some of these bills that they have actually more specific arguments against. On Friday, they did introduce a proposed fix for House Bill 389, which is the infamous property tax bill that gives us a lot of heartburn. And that piece of legislation was introduced by Speaker of the House, Speaker Moyle. And I think there was some impression that it might move pretty quickly into a hearing. I'm not 100% certain that it's going to get that. The AIC board made a late decision on that on Friday to oppose that bill. And there are differing opinions across the cities about whether we should support or oppose that bill. Mayor Chadwick has been the legislative liaison for AIC, has been working very closely with the House leadership and with Speaker Moyle, and trying to make some headway into that legislation. I think he's in the mindset, and I believe, did you actually have a conversation with him, Mr. Mayor? Yeah. Yeah, so I think has probably some more insight into that legislation. I think where we are concerned, it doesn't really do a lot for us, and it doesn't do a lot for a lot of cities. And so there are opinions of, well, should we oppose this? Because if this gets approved and doesn't really make a difference, is the legislature and its leadership going to think that, well, we fixed the bill and then we'll have no appetite for trying to make any other changes or improvements in the future? So there are definitely some differing opinions all over the board on this, but as a whole, AIC did take the position to strongly oppose the bill. But I believe that they are still working on position statements, because as of the end of the day today, I've not seen any of the messaging points about how they're going to try to message this out. Because I think because they do know that there are very different opinions about how we want to try to approach this. It's AIC and Kelly Packard, Executive Director Kelly Packer's position on it, that we're better to oppose it, even though there might be some things that would be helpful to much smaller cities, because it would increase the cap, the 8% cap for cities under 30,000. It could go, those cities of under 30,000 population could take that cap up to 15% instead of 8%. But it really does most of the other cities very little to no good. One of the most concerning components of that bill is that it does allow for a citizen initiative that would allow citizens to make a petition to put on the ballot to oppose, to basically lower property taxes. It would have the same requirements that 2/3 of the voters would need to approve that, but it could be potentially problematic for cities. And certainly that's probably one of the issues that's creating a great deal of concern for most of the cities. So unfortunately, it's a bill that's perceived as a fix, but it's not really a very big fix.
Right, and I'll elaborate a little bit on that. So Mayor Chadwick is the mayor of Star, and so he literally lives across the street from Speaker Moyle. Like, that's his house. So the problem we're having is that I think Mayor Chadwick has tried very hard to work with Speaker Moyle, and Speaker Moyle just is not budging or willing to give. And so I think from the mayor's perspective, this may be as good as it gets. The problem is it doesn't address the main concerns that people have with 389. So for instance, none of the issues that really are in the fix affect Garden City. We never grow it more than 8%. So that's a non-issue. They're not addressing our ability to include 100% of new construction. So it's still at 90%, and we were hoping to get to at least 95, right? Which is probably what most cities need, because it's, you have a city like, Eagle, say, right? And they're printing $1 million homes, and they can only take 90% of that value, and their levy rate is so low that they don't get a lot of money out of those homes. And it also doesn't address the URA, which is for us, the two biggest issues are new construction. We'd love to get 100% of that. And we will, if we do sunset our urban renewal agency, we want to be able to get 100% of that assessed value versus 80% of that assessed value. And I saw an email from the mayor of Nampa, Rick Hogan, that they have $1 billion in their URA assessed value. That would really help them, and in a couple of their URAs. And so being able to take 80% of that really squeezes them. So and the bill doesn't even touch that. And I think the feeling on the URA is that they're going to tackle that in future sessions. And so some people said, well, I think Chadwick's point is this is as good as it gets on the, we're not going to ever get the 90 to 100. We're not going to get more than 15%. And so, and the URA is going to be handled in future sessions. So we should approve this because it helps a bunch of cities, even though it doesn't help us. So then that's kind of where the debate. And I think the AIC is probably hearing from most of the people, like I wrote, like it doesn't help Garden City at all, but none of the fixes really do unless they go above 90%. So, but if it helps, let's say it helps 80% of the cities, maybe it is, but as good as we're going to get, because the speakers will literally unwilling to talk about that stuff. So that's kind of where we're at, and I think they're holding out. We at least need more than that, and there's a real concern, particularly in cities probably like Star. Again, probably why Chadwick likes this, where they can't pass a levy because they have such a ardent anti-tax base that they will actually then vote to lower their property taxes further, which would, those people that would support that are literally driving their city into the ground if they do that, because because he's having a hard time finding a city already. And so that scares him, right, based on his base, because it seems like people don't understand, that, their taxes pay for services like police and water and so it just, so he's caught in a pickle, right? So that's kind of the history of 389. So we'll see where it goes and whether they'll change it. I will say thank you for your update. Having Wendy kind of stay on top of this is huge. And, my people ask me a lot, what's your biggest surprise as the new mayor? It's not anything that's really happening with the city because we're well run. We've got fantastic city staff. We're doing all the right things. It's the impact that the legislature has on cities.
Yep.
Hands down. They've got a lot of things that are targeting law enforcement that are going to add a lot of things to our police department that they're approved. And they seem to be, in my opinion, just election cycle talking points that they can vote on. And so hopefully one of them will pass, like they've just voted not to have registration tabs. And so what we find is that when people have expired registration tags, a lot of times they have other stuff because those people don't tend to pay their, and so that goes away, right? And so there's it's really interesting. What I find is that they come up with these bills, but they do a very poor job of actually articulating specifically why they're a good thing. And so I'm the new mayor, so I can say what I want. It seems to me the legislature does a very good job to search for bills that aren't laws that aren't broken and want to break them. That's kind of my 2 cents on that. And so there's others. And so I think we're all hoping that we just get this session over with as soon as possible. So that's my 2 cents.
The good news is it's an election year. They do try to get out of there a little bit earlier than some years. I think it's going to be driven by the budget, though. I think they have to get all of the budgets approved. And once all the budgets are approved, then they pretty much, whatever's in the pipeline, it doesn't matter anymore. Usually there's very few bills that are considered a going home bill but once that going home bill is resolved and once the budgets are resolved, they're willing to let go of anything and everything that's.
The primary is around the corner, so we're hoping that kind of.
Yeah, but that's going to encourage them to want to go. Just one thing in closing too, because I know that I just didn't really articulate very well tonight because I felt a little bit scattered and I apologize. I think where a lot of the housing bills are concerned, these were driven as a result of an interim task force that was held at the legislature with the legislature on affordable housing. And some of these bills that are being brought forward are like many of the bills that are going through the legislature these days that are kind of like a bill mill sort of a process. These are coming from other places, looking at other cities and other states that are trying to introduce legislation, and then they're trying to basically bring it in and just slap it into place here. And it doesn't take into consideration all of the many challenges that we have. And the biggest issues that I think we see in these bills is the impact on infrastructure. So if some of these bills were to go into place, it means that let's just take a twin home or a duplex on any property within the city. If some of that starts happening in certain areas, and we do know that in certain areas of the city, we have sewer capacity constraints, that there are real issues with potentially having to not be able to approve those kinds of decisions. But yet I could tell you, at least in the early bills, there were cause of action that basically said you can't really stop these things from happening. And there's another bill in there about the use of religious lands for the purpose. And basically it says that you can't use any infrastructure as a reason for denying a project. That it's basically by right. And so, I think it's just a real misunderstanding of how land use and the complexity of how land use occurs. And I think that AIC has a pretty good finger on these, but I think that they may be looking to the cities to definitely go and put their 2 cents in on these issues that they are concerned about. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, any questions for?
No, I'll just quickly say a big thanks to Councilmember Carver Herbert for staying on top of all that stuff and giving us an update, and appreciate your update too, Mayor. Thank you.
Yeah, and if you have questions that come up as you read your newspaper, listen to me, or you guys get the AIC weekly update report, please reach out to Councilmember Carver and ask any further questions. She is more intimately involved than I am, and so if I have questions, she's going to be the person that I call. So thank you for that. You've been great. And so, okay, with that, I think we aren't going to executive session. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
I.
Aye.
Adjourn.